Hello, everybody. Welcome to What Culture. I'm Scott, joined by Ben Roy.
Hi.
Good, sir. Now, everybody seems to be off for Christmas, but where's the remaining people who have seen Rise of Skywalker? Ben Roy's seen it twice. I've seen it once.
Yep.
And we're quite divided on it. Now, the title of this video is obviously Things That It Gets Wrong, which is a bunch of different stuff. I have 18 points to debate. But Mr. Ben Roy is a way bigger fan than me, so we might go back and forward a little bit. But at least they are talking points, and I'm sure the comment section will get involved. Anyway, so we're just going to rattle through these. We have half an hour to tackle all of these things. And I'm sure it'll be all just lovely.
I'm ready.
Your body is ready.
Yeah.
Number 18. Now, full-on spoilers for this, by the way. Hopefully, you've seen the movie. If you haven't, I'm just going to assume that you do not care, because we need to talk about all the spoilerific stuff in the movie. That's the biggest stuff that everyone's talking about. So, number 18. Things that are wrong with it. Blowing the Palpatine reveal in the opening crawl. The opening sentence, just getting Palpatine out the way. I really hated this movie's approach to just rushing what should have been one of the biggest revelations in the saga.
Yeah, I guess so, but then there were so many I think I've just been consumed by all the trailers and the branding and everything that come around this film. And Palpatine was just kind of all over it after he was like, roll it again.
Yeah.
And then, but for me, I don't know. It's not a point to take it down for, but I can see why if people want to go in blind, not see anything. But I guess the past crawls haven't been that blatant, like someone's back.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Force Awakens, it was like Luke Skywalker is missing, and like they kind of go from there. But yeah, for me, it was just there's a massive problem throughout the whole film with pacing and editing, and a lack of build up and payoff. And those opening scenes for me were notably jarring. Like you get Palpatine out the way in the opening sentence, like it's like death speaks or whatever it says, and he's apparently sent a broadcast across the system, which we don't even hear. Apparently, that speech is in Fortnite. The original quote that Ian McDiarmid, the speech that he recorded, is in Fortnite. They broadcasted it across Fortnite. It seems to be in response to that.
I guess they could have just said an evil force is speaking.
Yes.
And then because that scene is straight away.
Yeah.
So yeah, that probably would have been a better way to do it.
Yeah. And then you could have cut to Kylo being one of the only people who responded to it, and then go to him getting the MacGuffin and then chasing it and finding Palpatine.
Yeah.
But instead, all of that happens within about 5 minutes, where it's like he's killing random people, he's tracking down this mysterious location, and then immediately the first thing that Palpatine says is the revelation that he's been behind the Vader voice, the Snoke in general. By the way, he is a Snoke clone, all that stuff. I mean, that moves into the second point that I had, which is just retconning everything so that Palpatine is the major string puller behind it. Did you like that stuff?
I think it works because it's Palpatine, and I think if anything, you can believe that the guy with the Force, the entity that has basically caused everything in the Skywalker saga, which we're calling it, has been responsible for this. And yes, I believe that because Sith can't come back as ghosts, and however he's manifested himself back as this form, I think that it works for me. And we had I don't think you introduce a new bad at the end, and I don't know if I feel like Kylo and Rey needed to come together,
right?
But then they would need to come together against a thing.
Do you think this is one of the only sort of cards they had left to play? Because for me, it feels like naked fan service.
Yes,
but in a good way, I guess.
Yes, and yes, because I'm being honest. As soon as Palpatine was in this, I was like, yes, please feed me the memes for another 20 odd years to go. But I thought he was actually really reserved in this.
I was going to say, do you think he has any memeable scenes? Because we have like unlimited power and him doing the Psycho Crusher spin attack and stuff.
When he said his first lines, the path
to the dark side is a way for abilities that many find disturbing or whatever.
Considered to be unnatural. And
yes.
I was, big pop.
Is that all you needed?
Yeah, it's weird. All I needed, and just yes, good. But I get at this point he's not so much a lively person as he was when he was actually alive. He's more of an evil spirit now.
Yeah, as much as they frame him, I like the sort of zombified Palpatine. I like that it's more Ian McDiarmid and less makeup and prosthetics on him. It is just a decaying body. Most of his hands have burned away and everything, or molded away.
And it used to be like the old books and like then after Jedi was Palpatine clones. Like he cloned himself.
Well, yeah, but then Lucas said that that's not the case in his canon, but that maybe this is discarded. I mean, I think it is the body that fell down the reactor shaft at the end of episode 6, and then whatever. But either way,
I don't believe the Lucas canon until he literally puts it out there and tells so we can see it, because this is not my canon. Show me the canon. Show me your canon.
They had a whole bunch of canons, and then they all got wiped away by the Disney fleet. Let's move on to Luke Skywalker. Now, his return, I have number 16 for me is Luke's first words. Now, I get the whole reason, like, because a whole bunch of this movie is literally addressing head on the biggest issues with The Last Jedi, as they're perceived by the people who really hated that movie. And I am mostly in that camp that I thought that movie was a giant mistake. But for me, it was more where it sat in a potential trilogy. And like now having the final part just retcon or address stuff in that movie. For me, number 16, Luke's first words, where he literally just catches the saber as Rey throws it, and his first line is like, "Oh, this weapon deserves more respect." A direct callback to him throwing it over his shoulder in The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? I hated that.
Made me smile.
Why?
Because I was like, sure, let's do it. Let's just. It was literally he might as well have turned to the camera and go, Rian Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. Is that because I mean, even as someone who thought that like I said, Last Jedi was a giant mistake, that's so nakedly going back on that.
But people can get so low in their life where they do things that they don't think is right, and then they can come back and be like, actually, no, that was wrong. I shouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm. Which it kind of is an extension to where he comes back at the end of the movie.
If we didn't have 17 films in one film, maybe we'd have had time to explore this.
I mean, I guess if say 10 years passes and 15 years passes and we look back at this trilogy and divorce it from the social media outrage and all the different negativity around it and everything, maybe that makes more sense. And people will write essays on how Luke eventually... Because the version of him at the end of Last Jedi is the mythical version. He is going to face down the Armada. And so, like, yeah, this could be an extension of that. And he realizes that he shouldn't have thrown it over his shoulder. At the minute, for me, the way that it sits is a direct answering of what Rian Johnson did, which felt icky to me.
This video should be called From a Certain Point of View.
Yes.
And from a certain point of view, I think that was actually quite okay.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, a lot of people, like, if you Google a whole bunch of stuff, Empire wasn't received very well back in the day. Things like Obi-Wan saying, "Oh, from a certain point of view, actually Vader was your father, and I didn't lie when I said that I killed him," and everything else. That he went to the dark side and everything. Yeah. I think if this fandom was around at the time, we would have called BS on that stuff. And it's only through time that we've sort of like accepted it.
And
or
now
gone.
it's heralded as the best in the
yeah,
whole
exactly.
saga, so.
And so I think time will be a healer with the vast majority of this stuff. But yeah, like I said, my main issues with this movie overall are pacing and how rushed it is and things like that. Number 15 though is Finn. I think that considering that they set up this guy as a stormtrooper who realizes what went wrong and he decides to move away from the First Order, they nigh on ditch everything. I think that it was a hard thing for JJ to bring back the character and do something with him after Rose denies his sacrifice. And we'll get onto Rose in a bit. But like, where do you even go with that character? For me, he was completely wasted.
I think the whole point of the Finn arc should have been tied to the eventual defeating of Phasma.
Right.
And I feel like that was pulled too quickly in Last Jedi. And the fact that, like, yes, she pretty much is just another Boba Fett. Oh, cool armor. This must be a cool person and cool backstory. And the books, really good, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's just like the Phasma should have been there. And I feel like the actual, like, doesn't necessarily, they could have not had a fight this time. It could have been a war of words. Phasma could have taken off the helmet and revealed some sort of burn on her face from when she'd fallen into
they could have easily brought her back at this stage.
Yeah, I just feel like there should have been something more, and I think that his whole arc should have been tied into Phasma as she was there from the beginning when she was like, FN217, put your helmet back on.
Yeah.
I feel that would have been a perfect way to tie them together.
I like that when they bring in a character called Jara, who's like also a defector, and they say, oh, by the way, we have this whole sort of like, platoon of people that are also living on this separate planet, and this is where you actually belong. And they could have done so much more with Finn, like going back and forward on like he's been, mind controls, or he's been indoctrinated since birth to believe that he needs to be a stormtrooper, and then he's like, no, actually it's a feeling and whatever. And like you can tell that if JJ helmed the whole trilogy, that would have been a through line.
Where would we have had that in this film though? That's the thing. Like what?
Well, that's what I mean about it feeling so messy, because like he has to go back and go, okay, well I was going to do this with the character. RJ didn't do that. Rian Johnson didn't do that. So I need to randomly pick at these threads.
And for the short time that she's on camera, like I actually didn't mind her as a character.
Fine character. Yeah. I just wish they did more with her. I think that it, like I said, it highlights just how little through line narrative there is between the whole trilogy, at least how it stands.
I like that her and Lando are going to go on some adventures, because just going to get some comics out of that now.
Pimpy Pimp Lando getting right back in there, going like, hey, let's find out where you're from.
It wasn't like that.
It was, ever since Solo, they've made Lando a full-on space pimp, and that was him macking on a young girl. I'm not having any different for Big Bad Lando getting stuck back in. Number 14 is Dominic Monaghan. Very quick point, but I literally just called this Dominic Monaghan. Like, why was that dude in the film? I think he's recognizable enough to be a known quantity, but then they don't do anything with him.
J.J. Abrams has friends,
I guess, and because he was in Lost, why not?
Still don't know his name.
Exactly.
He's always in the background of either a Leia scene or a Rose scene. He's never once gets any point to make apart from I'm going to finish someone's sentence.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to react.
I'm going to be in the background saying, "Oh, you should go over there. That's where the thing is." And then everyone just goes over there.
We know he's a great actor. Like, we've seen him in Lord of the Rings. We've seen him play his part in Lost. But just, I get it. He's going to be another character that we're going to get a billion books out of, and we're going to get all this stuff, and people going to lap it up. But for the most part, totally not needed.
It reminded me of, is it Greg Thunberg? I always call him, it's the dude from Heroes. Like, I think he's called Matt Parkman. And it always reminded me of that, where it's like, I think maybe it's just one of JJ's friends that he throws in. But it was a weird, that's a very minor point, but I thought he stood out because of the way that they frame him as having so importance and it doesn't do anything. He gets to hug a big slug, though, so at least he gets a nice
Claude, I think his name is.
Claude the Slug. Number 13 is a separate point for, I just referred to this as insanely bad editing and scene geography. And we talked about the editing before, the sort of like rushed pace. For me, it was the Force Awakens style of editing applied to a whole movie. Did you pick up on that stuff in general, like in terms of just the way that scenes flow into each other, how much they fall back on wipes, just every 10 seconds, wipe to the next thing, wipe to this?
It's weird because wipes, I feel like they're in the blood.
They're like the DNA of Star Wars.
Like,
but
George loved his wipe. I'm surprised we didn't get a star wipe at this point.
Probably, yeah.
But that first 20, 30 minutes, I felt like I was in light speed going,
yes,
like Thor,
the light speed jump
through that tunnel or something like that. But again,
you can go with it.
I can go with it. For the most part, I was fine.
Right.
But I can see, they should have just said, "Sorry, we're going to do 2 films now."
Mm-hmm. Well, see, the thing is, I think you
Rise
can.
of Skywalker Part 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think you can argue that because it's the end of a trilogy, there should be a notable ramp up in pace and excitement and celebration and whatever. And like, I think that's what he's going for. But like for me, on a basic filmmaking level, it made it feel rushed.
I'll tell you where I agree with this. Actually, it's every time we cut back to the bad guys on the First Order ships, I never really knew what they were doing. Like Hux is just there and there. Like random dude gets
like we're evil, I guess,
smushed into a ceiling. That was quite funny.
Yeah.
But really, unless you're following Rey and then maybe a bit of Finn and Poe, everyone else is just like, we're here, bye.
Well, that's the thing. I think we're here by encapsulates my general thoughts on that. That like they don't let. I said this in the review and stuff as well, but they don't let anything breathe. Like whether it's a set piece or a dialogue scene or anything, it's just every scene is written to propel the next thing. So we're always forever hurtling towards a finale that they could have just let breathe and have way better pace. But like you said, it's literally like he made 2 movies in one because he wanted to tell you what he would have done for the middle chapter, and it's like here's everything in one go. But that resulted in a notably frenetic film. And I mentioned scene geography just in terms of the placement of certain things, like when Rey's fighting Kylo with the jewel of the freight transport thing in the middle. After that, it just sidewipes away to get Rey out of that scenario, even though Kylo is right there, and his only mission at that point in the movie is to kill her. So why did he let her get away?
He didn't want to kill her, he wanted to turn her.
Well, either way,
I guess,
do something other than let her escape.
Defending Star Wars. I guess he does say that I wanted to test you.
Yes.
But sure. Why didn't he just do something else? But then I guess if it was a bit like Last Jedi where he also had a third plan on top of the other 2 plans you thought were going on, I think.
Kinda. I think in terms of scene geography, it's like in that very small space you have like Rey fighting Kylo, and then right next to that is the ship that they're trying to get started that Finn and Poe are on, and then right next to that is Chewie being taken captive. So all of that is right next to each other, but the First Order don't respond to Rey and don't respond to the ship that is firing and trying to take off.
Yeah.
So like in that scene, I was like, where the hell is everybody in relation to each other? And we know that they're next to each other, but because of the way that it's blocked and shot, you're supposed to expect that they are further away. Things like that just felt distracting.
And they were just like, oh, just leave the Falcon. Nah, they're at the Falcon now. Sod it. Let's take this ship.
And the bit when the whole they jump now chase scene, it goes between being in a canyon to being in like the open plains to being back in a canyon again, like whenever it feels convenient, like shot to shot. It like I said, it felt messy as hell. But people can debate that out in the comments. Now number 12, I just got everything about Kylo Ren. In terms of, I thought at the beginning they made him a one-note villain. Like he's in the opening crawl as Kylo Ren rages in search of Emperor Palpatine, which I thought was just like a reduction of his character. Like I get that he's lost, but they made him the Disney Infinity style cartoon version of himself, where he's just raging in all directions. What do you think of that?
I really disagree because I feel like the whole point, all of it to this point, has been Snoke ain't having this. This is mine.
Right.
Hux, you want to stand up to me? I'm going to crush your neck a bit, and then you're going to know that I am the leader. I'm the supreme leader now. And if there's a moment where Palpatine, the strongest force in the galaxy has ever, like side to side with Anakin and a few others, is coming back. You want to crush that quickly. And sure, he's on a crusade to find these Sith holocrons that can, the only two in the galaxy that can take you there. I felt like once he got there and then he realized Palpatine was there, he's then constructing. They must have like Force safe in their mind where they can have a little fort that Palpatine can't see. Because Palpatine always seems to know everything apart from the one thing that screws him right.
Yes,
over.
exactly. And no one even hints that. No one even realizes the Palpatine's still alive. Like that massive blot of Force energy like around the cosmos.
It is really far out of the galaxy. It's further than I would know.
No, seriously, it's really far away.
It takes like 12 hours. I don't know how long it takes Tatooine to Coruscant, but like that's like 3 times further the distance in the other direction.
I'll buy that he's so far away that happens. But in terms of Kylo, they
also just saying he masked himself in front of all the Jedi for years.
Yeah, I mean, sure, that isn't necessarily.
I feel Kylo was one of my favorite parts of the film.
Overall, yeah, but like that's for me. That's picking out nuggets of sweet corn in a mound of poop for me. But in terms of Kylo, they reconstitute his helmet. Like they couldn't have gone back on that scene from Last Jedi more. I was like, why didn't you just give him like a whole new look? Because even in the film, they reconstitute his helmet and they put it back on. He wears it for like 2 scenes, and then Rey calls him out and says, "Oh, you're just the cracks in between," and he takes it off again. Doesn't wear it for the rest of the movie. So what was even the point of that?
It's literally, I think that Palpatine was encouraging him to harken back to that and harken back to what made him terrifying. And sure, he is dangerous without the mask, but the mask is an imposing piece of equipment.
Oh yeah, I get what it represents, but is that not redundant considering what he's already done?
I think the cracks in it help to show that how redundant it is becoming and how what you think might be a Corlic series actually just full of holes.
Right. I like the idea of that. I thought the way that it was pulled off, just like, again, it was such a retrograde answer to something in Last Jedi.
I don't think it was just Rian Johnson broke this, so we're going to fix it.
I think that's exactly what it was. But people can debate that.
I don't.
I also had his turn back into Ben. I thought was rushed as hell. Like just randomly, Han Solo turns up. Randomly, Leia decides to use all her power. Like we can talk about Leia in a bit, but that rush to remind him who he really is. I mean, they're the 2 people that he turned away from for 20 years at this point.
Yes. At this point, though, he had almost just died. So as no,
because he dies after that. That's the distraction that results in him getting stabbed.
No, but Han appears after he gets stabbed. I was going to say, like, Leia uses the last bit of her power to project herself into that. Obviously not physically there, but in both their minds. And like, come on, just stop.
Yeah.
And he got the just stop, and as he contemplates it, gets stabbed. And then I feel like at that point, you're dying. You're like, what was this all for? And obviously Rey heals him, and then that's why the Han thing appears, and also because it's Han Solo, and a bunch of people like me would like to see Han Solo. But I also feel like that if you're gonna bring Han back, or if you're gonna do anything of it, the bringing the Han back was probably the best thing they could have done.
Yeah.
And yes, everything is rushed in this film because again, there was no time for anything.
No, and I mean, like I said, I just want to mention that, like, I thought that his turn was. I love what it is narratively. I love how it fits in. Kylo's my favorite character by a landslide, and I love how broken he is at the end of Last Jedi. But I thought to make that so that he just gives back into his like petulant rage, I thought was a kind of a disservice to the maturity of that character that he had in the middle film.
He's always been out for himself. He's always been like there, but like he's killing Snoke, like doing all these sort of things, like trying to get around it. He's always been like having his own perspective, and he wants to do something else. He's not just been locked in like a Vader was, where he's just like the leader of this Star Destroyer. And not Vader, which is just leader of Star Destroyer, but Kylo feels more separate from the whole First Order thing.
Yeah. I mean, like he comes in Force Awakens. He comes across as a petulant, angry child who like thrashes his computer and whatever. And then he tries to get some sort of balance alongside Rey in the middle chapter, and then it betrays him. So he's like, "Well, I'll just kill everything again." But yeah, like I said, I thought that his turn to the light was quite rushed. Even though I do like the final fight scene and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Number 11, I just mentioned Rose. I think that it feels like a direct answer to the fact that everyone hated her role and character in the middle movie. But her first line of dialogue is Finn, like they're establishing who's going to go on the big quest, and they ask Finn asks Rose, "Hey, do you want to come?" And she's like, "No, I've got stuff on. I've got to do this."
Leia would like me to have a look at old Star Destroyers and make sure that we know everything about old Star Destroyers, because we wouldn't have that on file.
Yeah,
but the Rose thing is so difficult because Kerry Tran portrayed Rose really well, but then the character itself, I don't think was that.
I mean, look, I will say that I hated her role as the character in Last Jedi. I hated that she denied Finn the sacrifice. I like the message of, like, you do need to, not throw yourself at impossible odds. But I think that the way that this is going to read, especially in the social media age, and maybe hindsight will change it, is a response to the negativity, the toxicity around how Kelly Marie Tran was bullied off social media or whatever. It's obviously a massive conversation in general as to how seriously you should take trolls. But, like, at the same time, doing something like this only emboldens that viewpoint.
Trolls should stop trolling. And
yes,
I wouldn't know in this movie that we have said a billion times already. There's too much in it already. What would we have had from Rose anyway?
Well, that's kind of. But even then, for me, they don't even try. They don't honor the fact that Finn and Rose were a thing, or they were potentially going to become a thing. Even if it's unrequited love, there's no dialogue for it.
Do you know what I thought? I feel like Anthony Daniels little fingered his way in. It's like, look, I'm going to be in the adventure this time.
Oh, God, 3PO.
And if you have to get rid of someone, it's going to have to be probably Rose.
Yes, we will talk about 3PO in a bit. I just think it's worth mentioning that, for me, that was one of the most egregious betrayals of something that had been set up in The Last Jedi. And, like I said, I think it reads terribly in the wider reality of social media. And like I said, the horrible, really ugly things that happened to Marie Tran, it sucks that they then wrote her character out, because it would have sucked to play that role again.
I will say, though, if you look at that, like, if you look at Lando from Empire to Jedi, I feel like he has less to do in Jedi, but I feel like he's always seen as more in it because he's in the final fight scene, the space scene where he's basically just sitting in a little room and then they're saying he's there. But I feel like Lando also didn't get as much in the final film either in Jedi.
No, not really. Yeah, I mean, I guess like with him, like in this film, it is just sort of like, well, who else can we bring back? We've hardly got anybody left. Palpatine, Lando, like, Neon Nob's nowhere to be seen in this. We don't need him, but
he doesn't die either, and it's like
no.
He's just going to be an old man now.
So another thing is I've got this down as Chewbacca's forced mourning scene, which for me felt like, again, another response to something that wasn't even in Force Awakens, which is people wanting to see Chewbacca react more to Han's death, because they just jump to Rey getting in the Falcon and them going off to Acto and meeting up with Luke. And we never saw Chewie's real reaction to Han dying, other than that initial shout when he gets knocked off the walkway.
I would say that was his real reaction.
Right.
And I would say that the whole him reacting to Leia's death, I thought was powerful, and it got me.
That's good. I'm glad it worked for some people. For me, it like the fact that they lingered on it. They always did this weird like slow zoom out, and they show him freaking out in a way that I've seen people describe what they wanted him to do in Force Awakens. But yeah, I thought that stuff was too forced.
I do feel like it, at the end of nine movies now, that we've finally given Chewbacca even 5 minutes to proper have some emotion. But I'm glad we actually got to see Chewie, like, this is literally the last of his friends now. Like, Luke's gone, Han's gone, him and Lando probably are casual friends at this point.
Yeah, they hug it out.
Yeah, but I think at that point, everyone's gone, and it comes upon you like
the whole old crew is gone.
I'm now going to live for probably another 100 years. And what am I going to do?
I think they could have maximized that scene by having him hug it out with Lando or something like that. Yeah. If they're going to play the old cast card, then they could have done that more effectively. Number 9, I've got down another Skybeam. I couldn't believe they did another Skybeam in another big budget Hollywood blockbuster. Is yet again, I mean, it comes from Palpatine shooting a ludicrous amount of electricity or force lightning up into the sky. But I laughed at that. I don't know if you thought that was cool, but for me, I thought it was lame.
I loved it.
Of course you did.
I think, again, Palpatine is the strongest thing in this story, and it is also a fantasy story. And
I don't think it's the strongest thing in the whole story.
Who's stronger than Palpatine?
Kylo. Oh, do you mean strongest in terms of like actual power level? I thought you meant narratively.
Oh yeah, not narratively.
Right.
Power level, and he is also kind of using MacGuffin to explain a lot of things away. But if anyone, I've always looked at Palpatine as this thing like, you can't stop him, and he's holding back in Jedi. He's taken off guard in Revenge of the Sith, and he's still trying to harness his dark side because he's hiding it the whole time. And in fact, this is the point where he's just going full Palpatine this time.
Did you like him demonstrating unlimited power?
Yes.
I mean, it's cool, but I think as a trope,
I will say that the ships probably fell to the surface a bit slower. I would have liked
barely even see any of them.
I would like to have seen like. Maybe Snap actually should have probably died in that scene rather than just I'm dying. dying.
Yeah, when they cut to him just pirouetting, spiraling out and dying, it's like, oh, I guess that guy just died now.
And for someone who's read the Aftermath trilogy, just like, oh, cheers. Thanks.
I think something like the Palpatine, like I said, I hate that for me, it's not necessarily that it's Palpatine doing that. I can get away with him having a limited power. It's that it's the same trope. We've seen it in every single superhero and big budget movie.
It's if he himself had destroyed a planet with lightning, that for me would have been too far. But I'm sorry, I can totally buy that Palpatine can just take down the last chance, and it was down to Rey to actually confront him.
That's a good segue, because then number 8 point is that I think Palpatine's actual death makes no sense. I don't like, and this is nitpicky as hell, but in the moment I thought it was pretty lame. Like, I get that it's a force technique to hold the lightsaber up and wield the lightning, but I thought it was lame that he doesn't just stop trying to kill himself. Like, he just does that. He just shoots forward until it reflects back at him.
He's really angry.
I guess so, and he thinks he can overpower it.
There are a few points when he sucks the energy from them. I can say that. I don't know what
Force
else.
energy, apparently.
Yeah, when he absorbs their energy, but it doesn't kill them somehow.
Yep.
Like, they never attempted to block him at all. Like, I would have liked Kylo.
I don't think they have their sabers on.
I would have liked Kylo to be right next to Rey and hold the other saber, than rather just Rey hold both.
Yeah, I like the image. Well, I have a separate point about the lightsaber colors, but I like the idea that Luke and Leia's lightsabers came together to finally kill Palpatine. I get that that's totally what they were going for, but in terms of like his death, I thought they could have done more with that symbology, or they could have done more with that visual than just have him kill himself.
Do you remember what he said before Kylo got thrown into the hole?
No.
Now you will fall like I once did. Pretty much going, I'm going to throw you in a hole because that's what happened to me.
That's what I did. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff across this movie that mimics Return, which is obviously what JJ does. And yeah, even things like revealing the whole fleet being under attack is something that's entirely at the end of Return.
Everything around Palp's lair and the look of it, the feel of it, I thought was on point.
Right.
I just feel like, are we going to just decide to block now rather than the whole time?
Yeah.
And I get that Rey was then like, nah, screw this, and then like she gets that boost.
It's a great visual. Like, I mean, they do a really good, cool shot where they come back to that scene from the side and they show her like facing off against Palps from like a slight, like a mid-wide angle or whatever it is, from a bit more distance.
And I say a bit
Looks
of his
cool.
dialogue was delivered weird, like when he goes, Empress Palpatine. He could shoot it like, I would have had like Empress Palpatine, more of a pause rather than everything felt a bit rushed.
Yeah, I mean, even in terms of like that delivery feels a bit rushed.
The rush of Skywalker.
Yes. Oh, we mentioned Finn before, but I guess it's just sort of like general like Poe as well. Like, it's that idea of like trying to give him way more agency in the moment than anything that he had in Last Jedi.
I mean, I enjoyed him.
I enjoyed him enough, but I think their chemistry felt really weird, considering like even like, you know, things like, we'll get onto 3PO, but like you know, trying to give sort of them like this camaraderie, but then they rush a lot of their stuff. They don't really get any moments together. It's more just there because it's something to address from Last Jedi.
I can believe the Finn Poe stuff. Like, obviously we don't. I think they say it's a year, but we don't actually know.
Timeline's a massive problem. Yeah,
we don't exactly know how long it was between, and they get Finn and Poe and Rey get like one moment at the end of Last Skywalker. Last Jedi.
Last Jedi.
As I go, hi, I'm Poe. I'm Rey.
Even before, before when we talked about Finn, I was regarding like his whole thing with the Stormtrooper. But even in regards to their group chemistry, they have a moment where Finn says he needs to tell Rey something, and they just hand wave it away. Assumingly, it was him saying that he's in love with her or something.
Yeah.
But that reduces his character just down to being this like thirsty guy that has nothing to do other than yell and try and profess his love.
I do get it. Like, we were told, oh, they're going to be together. They're all going to be together. But it's like, yeah, it's a bit too late though. Like, you can't just go, now we're friends.
Yeah, and it's like I said, I think that they rush the group chemistry, and considering, I mean, one of the biggest things that'll solve a lot of the plot holes is you can put as much time as you want in between between Last Jedi and Rise. If you want to be like, okay, well, this much time happened so that Rey learned how to grab freight transports out of the sky, and this much time passed so that Finn and Poe hang out with each other more. But like, in terms of how it's portrayed, I thought that their actual group dialogue was pretty rushed. They tried some sort of like, you know, like fun sort of banter, but a lot of it felt just like placeholder. It was like, well, we need something here because people missed that from the second movie.
It was fine. Like, it wasn't amazing.
It was definitely not amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about lightsabers. Number 6, I just have what happened to the green lightsaber, because we have it in the flashback, and like he has it in the flashback in Last Jedi. But then when Rey produces both sabers, they're both blue. Why are they always blue? Why not the green?
I don't understand why Rey never made her own lightsaber until the very last frame of the film. Like,
for more movies or spin-offs.
But come on, like, the saber was broke in Last Jedi. The saber came out of Maz's chest out of nowhere.
Another wasted plot point. Yep.
In Force Awakens. Just give her a difference. Like that's what I think. That's why I got so excited when I saw, which was obviously going to be a flashback, the Rey with the red lightsaber. Just give her something. Give her
or a Force
something of her own. And everyone gets angry like, oh, you've called it Rey's lightsaber in the toys description.
Right.
You can't do that. I mean, you can't do that, but still, fine, whatever. But was his lightsaber just behind another brick that he didn't show her?
I don't know. If you've shown the green one, for me, that is Luke's saber. I didn't get why he didn't have it at the end of Last
it's
Jedi.
Anakin's saber, isn't it?
Well, no, the green one is his. The one that he makes in between Empire.
Yeah, but
and
like
Return.
that's the blue saber is the Anakin saber
Yeah.
all the way back from Revenge that Obi-Wan picks up on Mustafar.
Yeah. That's great. Like a through line thing. That's the one that eventually defeats Palpatine. So
Yeah.
it's almost like the thing that Anakin once wielded eventually defeats the guy that betrayed him. But at the same time, where the hell's the green one? And why couldn't that? Like that would have been so much a better visual, green crossed with blue, with when Rey's defeating Skywalker.
Yeah.
Palpatine.
Every Star Wars film had a bit of too much of a hard on for blue lightsabers, and hopefully that we with the orange one, the yellow one at the end,
Yep.
we kind of move way into
Same as one in Fallen Order.
Well, I changed it straight away to green. So
You can get a yellow one in Jedi Fallen Order
I just
as
hope
well.
we diversify a bit more.
Yes. We'll talk about these then. The next few we can sort of rattle through. Number 5 is young Leia CGI. Tags onto that scene when they show them both fighting in the past. I thought young Hamill looked pretty solid.
Yeah.
But I thought Leia looked like her Battlefront 2 skin. Just looked like a CGI, like a weird video game skin.
She probably looked extremely close to the Rogue One.
Yes.
And also...
It's probably the basis for it.
For me, it's just that the fact that she's no longer with us, and it hit me a bit more. And like, I didn't realize how much like I liked Leia in these films until in the past trilogy until these films came. I was like, no, actually, Carrie Fisher as Leia, and Leia in general is just an amazing character.
You should save Leia thoughts for a little bit after this.
Cool.
But in terms of the CGI, yeah, I mean, I like that they show them both sparring together. They really go all in on Leia was a Jedi all along kind of thing to try and retroactively make the floating scene make more sense.
I like
Last
that
Jedi.
she gave it up. I like that.
Yeah.
And
To become a general.
And yes, the CG. But your point, the CGI did look a bit red.
Yes. Number 4 is just meaningless death scenes. They have there's just too many fake outs for me. Chewbacca's one is immediately undone in the next scene. 3PO's is immediately undone about 20 minutes later. They don't really make anything. There's no weight. There's no threat.
Look, with droids, come on.
No, but with Chewie.
Yeah, I want to go 3PO. I'm just annoyed. Like, why does no one ever just say, "Oh, just back it up"? Just like just free
External hard drive.
Just put 3PO's. Just get 3PO's brain, copy it over there, and stuff it in another protocol droid, and send this one out to fly a ship.
They kind of do that with R2 giving him the backup.
When they did that, he should have had all of his memories as well. It shouldn't have just been from the original trilogy. He should have just gone or remembered from all the prequel stuff as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then like the Chewie one, I done it. It hit me the first time I watched it, but then as soon as it hit me and I was a bit upset, I was like, wait a minute, there were 2 of them. Maybe, hopefully he's still alive. And then second time watching it, it didn't impact me because I knew it was coming.
Right. The bit when they blow him up, I was like, oh my God, you've actually done something. You've actually done something new. That was like the first time I watched that movie where I was like, cool, you've actually done something. Oh no, you haven't.
I guess the Kylo one, him falling down the pit as well, was another fake out.
I was never going to buy that was the end of him. But like,
Could you imagine?
I know. But like when he did die though, that was so random. It was just like, oh well, I guess so because like force energy and life energy and whatever. But then
I would say it's not random. He transferred all of his life into her.
No, they explain it, but he's allowed just long enough to sort of make out for a bit, and then he like dies in the most comical sort of way. I thought his death, like, it makes sense narratively, but again, it felt kind of rushed. Let's talk about. In fact, that's the next point. Rushing Reylo. I thought that they did that just for the sake of it. Like as soon as they were looking at each other, it was like, well, they're gonna make out because why not? It's another box to tick.
Until they were at that moment, I never thought that was going to
happen.
happen.
There's no sexual chemistry or energy between the two whatsoever. You kind of have a bit of it in Last Jedi, but it's completely discarded in this movie.
There's kind of no sexual
until
chemistry
this moment.
in Star Wars, apart from Empire when Han is literally like grinding up against Leia as she's trying to fix the Falcon. But apart from that, like...
I would say that the Force visions in Last Jedi are pretty steamy, with Mr. Shirtless Kylo talking to Rey, and they kind of have a little bit of a back and forth.
And also, like...
touch fingers.
A few, like, really weird scenes with Padme and Anakin, but it's weird. I don't...
Were you on board with Reylo?
I just need to finish this bit. Sex and all that thing in Star Wars, it's weird because it doesn't feel like it works, but it probably should because it's just a part of life. And
Palpatine's shagging around.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What was Palpatine shagging?
Literally no idea, to be honest.
Uncle Palp's getting his.
Probably force into the... yeah, I don't know.
But, yeah.
Uses the Force.
I wouldn't have minded it as much if it was more telegraphed and if there was more of, like, they had more of a moment. Sure, they touched hands, and I don't know, because Star Wars has always done relationships bad apart from the Han and Leia thing. So I'm going to just say I probably agree with you there.
Yes, I think it felt thrown in, but we can see what the comments think. Number 2 was an overall point about making a movie in direct response to fandoms. I just think that's a bad precedent to set. It's an overarching point, and we've touched on it a little bit up until now. What was your general thoughts on that? Do you think that's like something that Hollywood should do more of, that idea of going with what the fans want, or do you think that robs a movie of individuality?
It's probably the biggest problem here, because I don't know how to talk to you about this or say this on camera, because I didn't hate Last Jedi. I didn't love it. I was just kind of like, sure, but what are you going to do next?
Yes.
And the fact that we know that there was never any plan obviously JJ probably had his own plan and stuff, but
I just don't buy that anymore.
The way I think that they were trying to do the whole everyone's could do their own film is because they didn't want to create another Lucas where the fans look to and we want this person's vision, and
it should be a law that's shared,
which eventually happens, because they realized not Rian Johnson made a competent film, but it wasn't. There's no thinking after that, and maybe Ryan did have an idea, but
it feels so closed off after Last Jedi.
And I don't know what you do with a film that essentially ends 9 movies over 40 years, 20 years of my life since I first saw the first one in the cinema. It's just kind of like...
Do you think the only way that they can do that is by pulling at the threads of the things that were unanswered, as opposed to inventing new stuff?
Yeah, at this point, you just need to probably do what they did and have a happy-go ending and try and finish things off. I'm happy that it didn't just end on a shot of them on Jungle Planet and we got a bit more of Rey. But I don't know, because there's the toxic fan, give me what I want, give me what I want.
And they did.
I'm kind of like, give me what I want, but not in that I'm going to shout at you on Twitter and bully Kelly Marie Tran off Twitter and all this thing. I'm just like, just give me what I love.
Yeah, and I think for me...
also, I'm not against change. But at the same time, it's such a mess, and it was such a mess for so many years, and it's taken so much out of all of us that it just needed to be over.
That's the meme. That's the takeaway meme, is the life energy being sucked out of the heroes as they try and carry on.
Palps is over there sucking the edge out of us now.
Palps is Disney. Yeah. After all this. But I think making a movie in direct response to so many fan requests and social media outrage and things like that, I think robbed the movie of artistry for me and creativity. And for me, when it finished, I remember looking across to Sai, who we were sitting with, you can watch the review, and just saying that wasn't a film. That was not a movie that was made out of any creative drive or any will to express anything other than fixing a brand, other than answering fan problems, etc. I think that's one of the biggest specters that'll forever haunt this trilogy.
After that, the speech I just gave that, I will say though, I loved that we at least got Qui-Gon Jinn, Mace Windu, and somehow Adi Gallia,
Ahsoka Tano,
just speaking at the end, but Ewan McGregor, sorry, but I can never say Ewan McGregor. But I really wish, I would have. They should have probably had them as. I would have liked to have them as Force ghosts.
Yeah, all lined
next to them, helping them along with Leia and Luke as well. Then it would have, and Kylo should have been there, and that would have been probably so much more of a better visual, a better part, and it would have been more finite than just a few voices.
And other than Rey saying that I am all the Jedi, I mean, I honestly really like Rey, but I thought that, the visual would have been better than her just saying it. Number 1, now this isn't meant to be disrespectful, but I thought it stood out. It was just Carrie Fisher's reused footage. I don't know if it stood out to you in the beginning or not, but I thought that you could really tell that they were reusing footage from Force Awakens.
I mean, you knew this was coming, so it's like, I feel like I'd already prepared for this film to be maybe a dumpster fire.
Right.
And it's weird because, again, you get so emotional because this is Star Wars is part of people and people take it too seriously. And Leia, Carrie Fisher, is no longer with us. And for me, I probably thought it's the best they could have done. I mean, she never walked because tracking her face on another person's body would have been terrible.
There was just some things where they literally reused some of the footage from the original Force Awakens trailers of her handing Rey the lightsaber, then she hands it back, and then there's the bit that stood out to me the most was the bit when Rey says she's going to leave to do the next adventure, and they just cut to Leia going, no. And then it cuts back to Rey and going, well, I need to do this, so I'm going to leave. And then they wipe away from it. Really shoddy, I thought. Really sloppy filmmaking. I get the obvious reality that she's passed away, but don't write scenes around that footage if you can't make use of it.
Yeah, at this point, I'm just going to say, what else? They should have probably thought it through a bit more and for the most part, I think the Leia stuff worked for me. I was actually amazed how much they got.
I love the idea that her final use of energy, her final life force is converting Ben back to the light side. That's fantastic. But I thought that they could have...
And preventing Rey from turning to the dark, because Rey full on went for the kill when Kylo wasn't doing anything. And Kylo held back on the kill shot more than once in this film as well. Whereas Rey was going for the kill throughout.
I think that for me they could have mentioned Leia in the opening crawl and said that General Organa is ill or has fallen into a deep sleep or something like that, and she could have come to for that final moment, and you could have done stuff through her, and you could have had Force visions or whatever. Like if you're going to do CGI young Leia, then maybe use that model for something else. But I thought that it was, especially at the opening, for me the opening is the sloppiest part because it's in such a hurry to get through so much stuff. Like it is a miniature middle chapter in that opening bit. But yeah, we can do a couple of closing thoughts. You're overall quite positive on it.
It's
just to end on something other than complaints.
No, I enjoyed it. I like it, and I'm torn because it's just there's 6 years of baggage, and it's all that's happened, deaths, people being bullied, and all that sort of thing, and not planning things out when you see how immaculately the MCU has turned out. It's just like, how does this turn out like this? But for me, it ended on somewhat of a high, and as I'm looking forward when we eventually get 10, 11, 12, at least the state of the galaxy isn't just like,
yeah, it's all done forever.
Like we've got something to maybe build off of, and yeah. I just wish that if you're going to put this Duel of Fates remix with the Imperial March in the trailers and have Palpatine go, but the final battle is about to begin. Don't just lie to me. Put that in there.
Darth Maul is back alive somewhere now as well, so he's out there.
Yeah, but Darth Maul's dead.
No, he came back in Solo.
Yeah, but then
I guess he died again.
He gets shanked on Tatooine.
Yes. Either way, though, I thought that it's a very divisive finale. Looking at the critic response is very low. It's on about 56% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. The general audience score is way higher. And it's like a ratio. It's like 1 in 5 people seem to be positive on it, but the majority seem to be like, oh dear God.
It's weird because Last Jedi was one of the best reviewed ever, and the fans on Rotten Tomatoes we hated it, but then it's now almost the reverse this time. So I don't know, like. Maybe Star Wars is just too big. Maybe too many people, like, from too many points of view, from a certain point of view,
from every point of view,
like Star Wars. So it's never going to please anyone the way it has done ever again.
I would, as a final thing, I would say that no movie is ever going to please everybody, but that all you can do is make your movie and not make something that is so reactive and so lacking in creativity and so dependent on answering people that, like you said, will never be pleased. All you can do is your own thing, and I don't feel like JJ did his own thing. I think he was too busy trying to wrap up negative plot points from the middle movie.
I don't think it was terrible. I just think it's just bad circumstances, and like it's okay to hate and love this movie at this point.
The light and the dark, united as one. But let us know anything down in the comments below of Rise of Skywalker, or maybe you're still planning on going to see it. What do you think of the general kerfuffle around this film? For now, though, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Ben Roy Turner.
We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Goodbye there.